Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast, the podcast for moms who know that when they take care of themselves, they can take better care of everyone else. This time of year can be especially hard to take care of our physical health. We have all these things going on at the end of the year, holidays and activities and events, and food is not always the healthiest. And it can be kind of a struggle, almost a choice between being deprived or being happy, right? But it does not have to be like that. If you struggle with weight gain over the holidays, I want to help you. January 1st, I am starting a program called Mind Body Transformation to help you lose weight, but also to help you really know how to take care of your health throughout the year so that you don't have those fluctuations in weight, so that you know how to take care of your body because you know what really fuels you and what makes you feel good. And that is going to help you so much in the long term. So to get information on that program, visit www.momswhoknowpodcast.com/mindbody. Now, for all of my listeners who sign up for this 3-month program before the end of the month, so before the end of November, I'm throwing in a free cookbook with tons of healthy recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. There's even desserts in there. So go check that out. And let's go ahead and talk about our podcast today. So I am excited about our guest. I've been wanting to have her on for a while because she's someone that I've worked with personally. You'll get to know her a little bit on the podcast. But today we're talking about Reiki, which is energy healing. Some of you might not be familiar with energy work, and so I invite you to listen to this podcast with an open mind and really listen to see if this is something for you that would help and benefit you in your life. So let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and I'm excited about our guest today, Mindy Faulkner. Mindy, thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, Mindy is so fun. I'm excited for you guys to get to know her and to learn from her. And Mindy is a Reiki practitioner. Mindy is a Reiki practitioner who I've been able to work with, and I'm excited for you guys to be introduced to her and just learn from her, but also to learn more about Reiki and what it is. So I think this is going to be familiar for some, but for some people, I know whenever I've mentioned Reiki, people are like, what? What is that? No idea.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people who don't even know what it is.
Right.
So I would love to start there. Tell us a little bit about Reiki, about what it is and how you were first introduced to it.
Sure. So Reiki is considered to be an energy modality. It works with the energy system of the body to help restore balance, to help to clear anything that might be creating an imbalance within the energy system of the body. And for most people already, that gets a little bit confusing. So one of the ways that I like to highlight this is just like we have a limbic system or we have a circulatory system, and to the naked eye, we don't see those things. It requires certain tools. We also have an energetic system. And within that energetic system, there are different components, just like there are for all the other systems of the body. And so what energy work does, any of the modalities, is to work to help restore balance within that system. And so Reiki is just one of the modalities that we use. And in fact, for me, my journey with energy work began a really long time ago, even though I didn't know it at the time. We didn't call it energy work at the time, but I trained for many, many years in visualizations, breath work, mindset, being able to understand our emotions, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, how to utilize those emotions. And those are all parts of the electrical system or the energy system of the body. They contribute to that system. And then several years ago, our family was experiencing some unique opportunities with the help of a couple of different members of my immediate family. One of my sons and my husband was having some health concerns. And we tried a variety of things. We were using Western medicine. We were using chiropractic, holistic medicine. I at the time was kind of more in the field of towards talk therapy. And so we were utilizing things even of that nature. And we just weren't getting a complete answer. Certain pieces were helping and we could see their benefit, but we weren't getting a complete answer. And that's when energy work as a modality, as a option came into my world, a little more science-based. And I actually started apprenticing under a few different modalities. I was studying a few different modalities. Most of those were intention-based. And within energy work, we have two main types. You have intention-based and you have hands-on. And what I started with was more intention-based, which means we utilize words and scripts and ideas to help introduce different frequencies into the body. And then Reiki actually was one of those amazing things that we see a divine hand involved in it. I had a friend call me up one day and say, I know that you've been studying these things. And I know she was aware of some of the situations that we were facing with health concerns. And so she said, I found out that there's a Reiki master that is coming to your town and is going to teach. And I just felt so guided to see if you would take the class, and I wanted to gift the class to you. So she had gone ahead and signed both of us up for a Reiki level 1 class. And by this point, I had learned to be a good receiver. And so I had said, oh, that's so kind. Thank you so much. What is Reiki? I have no idea what that is. And so that actually, my level 1 class was a big learning moment, because this was the first introduction I had to hands-on energy work. I was pretty familiar by this point with intention-based. This was my first experience with hands-on, which simply means we work directly with the chakras and the meridians of the electrical system. And I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the science underneath it. It helped me to make some connections first, and most importantly for my family. But then I could see the potential that this would have to help others. And one of the main things that drew me to Reiki was because it is hands-on and we don't have to talk. It has proven very, very useful, especially for anyone suffering from any kind of trauma. One of the things that I had learned from some of my own life experiences is that talking about trauma isn't always the most effective way to overcoming trauma. Because a lot of times when we talk about it, it brings all of those feelings up again, and our body is kind of just swimming in those energies. And so the hands-on method gave a really practical way to help the body clear the energy of trauma without having to really go back and relive any of it. So I just fell in love with it at that point. It became something that just resonated on a level so deep that I just jumped in, haven't looked back since.
That is so cool and exciting how all the pieces kind of fit together. And, you had already had enough of exposure to different modalities and different ideas that you could be open to that. Because I think sometimes for people, especially in the United States and in our culture, it's very like we're Western medicine and, double blind placebo studies and things like that. And so it can be hard to accept some of these things and to be open. So it's good. You had this path that led you that way. Now I want to hear a little bit more. So because you were new to Reiki and you just jumped in and did this class, what was the class like? Both, the methods that they taught you, like what you actually did, and also your mindset, as you're hearing and learning all this.
Yeah. For me, the very first day, so the class was a 2-day class, I felt in over my head. I was so aware of what I didn't know. And the class, I was with other people who were very trained in other hands-on modalities. So they were talking about all of the chakras and the meridians. They were very familiar with that lingo. And I think that's a big part of why this seems so strange. There are terms and words that most of us just aren't familiar with. Or if we are, we don't really understand what they do. We've just kind of heard them, maybe even in spheres that aren't great fits for us. And so we're not really sure where it all fits. And I was certainly encountering that. At the time that I took my level 1 class, there was some really intense experiences happening with the help of a couple of my family members. So I was going into this eyes wide open for two reasons. At this point, I was not looking to build a business. I was not looking to start a practice. I was looking for ways to help my family. That was really my biggest motivation in what I was doing. And so as I sat there, I was kind of going back and forth between making connections about things that I felt like would be useful for different family members. But I also had this kind of unique experience where I knew enough about energy work, and I had interacted with several loved ones and other people who had ventured into this world of energy work, because it really does feel like that, I think, when you're brand new to the idea. And I had seen people get different ideas or make different connections, especially when it came to their faith or their religion. And as I've done this a lot longer, I think I better understand why. But that was a big concern for me. I'm a very spiritual person, and I am very committed to my spiritual beliefs. And so I wanted to make sure that this fit and wouldn't try to take away from or direct in a different way. And one of the hardest things about energy work, like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, it's a little bit out there for us only because it's a soft science right now, which just simply means we don't have the tools yet to be able to hook someone up and say, look at the functioning of this chakra. Now let me show you when I do this. And we're getting there. There's starting to be more machines that can do similar things to that, but we haven't had enough time to build those up in the way of credibility. But one of the things I like to remind people, all of the sciences started this way. Western medicine started this way. Physical therapy started this way. Massage therapy started this way. Even chiropractic started this way. Everything started as a soft science. In fact, one of my very favorite stories is years ago, before the invention of the microscope, there was this wackadoodle doctor that believed that there were living organisms that were floating around that you could come into contact with that would get inside of your body and make you sick. And people knew he was a wackadoodle. They thought he was crazy because it just sounded like sci-fi. It sounded like aliens invading
crazy.
us, right?
Yeah.
And then the microscope was invented. And all of a sudden, we knew that there was viruses and bacteria, these living organisms that we could come into contact with that could make us sick. And now all of a sudden, what had seemed like sci-fi, all of a sudden didn't anymore. And we understood it and we knew how to help. So energy work right now here in the West is still very much in that stage. We're just in the soft science stage, which means that we're left to the interpretation and the explanation of whichever energy worker or modality that you're studying from or getting help from. And so it does lend to a little bit of, well, this energy worker said this, but this energy worker said this. And chances are they're saying the same thing because there is a science to this, but the way we explain it could be a little bit different. And it's just because we don't, somebody somewhere had to decide we were all going to call our thumb a thumb. And then we all agreed to that. And that's how it works. We're getting there with energy work. We're coming up with names and ways to describe certain things, but it's not yet what we would call a hard science. And so I think that's where it gets a little convoluted for people. And I had seen people then, because of that little bit of confusion or difference, it could create some big confusion for people in other areas of their life. And for me, when I was listening in on my first class, my two big focuses were trying to see how this fit with what I already believe and know to be true in my own life, and how this was going to be able to help my family. And so it was kind of a unique experience. That level 1 class for me was very much that way. I had to navigate through some insecurities about not feeling like I didn't know as much as everybody else already knew. And then just these big questions that I had in my mind. And it was powerful as I learned more and more about the science, and I saw the connections, and I saw that it was enhancing to everything that I already knew to be true. It didn't take away from, it didn't change. It just gave me new connection points, which I feel like all the sciences have the potential to do when we look at it through a lens of faith.
I'm glad you brought up the faith component, because I think that that is another thing that can be a challenge for people.
Sure.
You know, is this going to be against what I believe? Is this going
Right.
to be, is even
Yeah,
you just where is this energy coming from? Just kind of
absolutely.
weirdness around that. So I'm glad, because for people of faith, that can be something for them to, again, have more of an open mind as they
Hmm.
hear about that. And then
Absolutely.
I want you to talk a little bit more. You have mentioned a few times, that you were looking to help people in your family. So how
Yeah.
does Reiki help people?
That's a really good question. So I had two kind of unique experiences happening side by side at my house. I had one member of my family who had some very physical problems that were going on, a lot of physical symptoms, and we just weren't getting a lot of answers. Medication wasn't helping completely. I was doing a lot with holistic side and adjusting diet, making, utilizing some of the other tools, oils and homeopathic things. We can make a little bit of a difference. I could bring some relief to that physical side, but I wasn't making complete connections. We weren't alleviating the problem completely. And then I had another member of my family that was experiencing a mental health crisis. And it was one of those types of crises that, unless you've experienced it, it's really hard to grasp the full depth of what it was that we were looking at. But again, we had employed as many different supports as we could. We had utilized Western medicine and homeopathic and talk therapy, and we had tried so many things, and we just weren't getting to a solution or a resolution. And so both these members of my family were suffering pretty intensely. And so I was looking for another solution. And with Reiki, one of the things that I think is helpful for people to understand is that within your electrical system, there are very real components. I've mentioned them a couple times. Chakras and meridians are the main ones. There are others, but those are the main ones that most people hear and talk about. And the only big thing for people to know about chakras is that they work for your electrical system like your lungs work for your physical system. So they draw energy in, and there's energy all around us. Everything is just frequency. Everything is just molecules in motion. And we require that energy for overall health and stability. And so the chakras are what process the energy as it comes in, utilize the parts of that you need, and release the parts that you don't. Just like your lungs draw air in, use the parts of the air that you need, and release the parts that you don't. And then your meridians, they work like arteries and capillaries. So they just move the energy all around the system. But just like on the physical side, your lungs can become congested or your arteries can become clogged. The same thing can happen with chakras or meridians, but most of us aren't familiar with what those early warning symptoms are. And so that goes on long enough that now we have compromised energy flow to the entire system, because just like your circulation system, your circulatory system has very specific parts, but then those parts help to nourish and take care of other parts, right? Of the skeletal system and of the muscular system. And they all work together. It's the same thing with your electrical system. And so if something there is compromised for long enough, pretty soon your body is going to start to manifest physical pain or illness or emotional pain or illness. And sometimes it comes down to a problem within the electrical system. And so with Reiki, what we discovered as we could help to bring those different components back into balance, we started to make a lot more headway. In fact, some of the medication that different family members were using began working more effectively. We started getting the results from the medication that we had been told we would see as we got the electrical system back into better functioning. And it takes time. It's the same with any method of healing. It just takes some time. And certainly that was true in the energy system as well. But over time, we have just seen that it helped everything else to work better. So it was just that for us and what we had gone through. And because we had tried so many different supports, this was kind of that final missing link that we needed to help everything just connect and flow. And then over time, the body got better. Yeah,
that's such a good description of how it all works. I think that's so helpful for people.
It's amazing. It's amazing to see so much of what people feel as discomfort. Once we can get that energy system back into balance, it's pretty profound what we start to notice shifting and changing, and how I've even seen people who are adjusting their diet, helping the energy system to flow just helps the body be able to make those adjustments even within the nutritional side of things and be more effective in what it's doing. Getting that energy flow, it just helps. It's the same as with circulation. If your circulation isn't moving the way you need it to, other systems are going to be impacted, right? And sometimes getting that circulation back helps everything else in the body to heal more rapidly. It's the same thing with our electrical system.
Yeah. So I feel like what that explanation did is it makes something that sounds like woo woo, makes it like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, of course we need to have this balance in our energy. It makes it very relatable.
Yes. Well, if there is anything, whenever people ask me about Reiki, the one thing I try to really help people understand, there is a science to this. And so just because we speak about it in words that are unfamiliar doesn't mean that it loses credibility. We just have to start to give solid explanations about what the words are that we're using. And then once we understand that, it really is pretty logical. It really does just make sense. But we need to make sure that we're getting really clear about the underlying science behind it. But anytime you're talking about things like emotion, and I think this is where it gets complicated for people, with your electrical system, we are talking about energy, but we also are talking about emotions. And in my understanding and the way that I teach this, I teach those as two separate things. I teach that we have the energy of the emotion, but then we have the emotion itself. And the emotion itself, I believe, is a high frequency communication. And however people's belief systems wrap around that, whatever word they want to attribute this is either a spiritual, the higher self trying to communicate, the body and the spirit trying to communicate, whether it's the universe trying to communicate. There is this high frequency communication, even if you're just talking your conscious to your subconscious, that holds true here. But then you've got the energy of the communication, and it's the energy that most people are familiar with. So when we ask somebody, what does it look like in your experience when you feel frustrated? Typically what they describe to us is the energy of frustration. And then the body has certain responses and behaviors based on that energy. But once we can train people to understand that that energy is actually just a physical signal to get your body's attention, that there is something else that you need to notice, and that is the emotion. Now we make different decisions. And I recognize now that frustration has a different purpose. Almost always, frustration is a signal that somewhere a boundary's been crossed. Either I've crossed one or someone else has crossed one. But when I just react on the energy of frustration, lots of times people lash out, or they shut down, or they go into a panic. And that's just a response based on the energy. But when we can get the pure information and we can figure out what our body's trying to signal to us, now I can make an action instead of a reaction. And by acting, that's what keeps the circuit, the electrical circuit of the body, that's what allows that circuit to be complete. And that's how we don't get energy stored in our body. But when I don't know that, or when I get lost in the energy of it, that energy, the circuit isn't complete. And that's where we start to get some congestion or some clogs within the electrical system.
So, okay, let me clear this up, make sure that I'm understanding you right. So if in a perfect world, right, if every time you had this experience with frustration or whatever the thing is, and you acted on it and you saw it to completion and you worked it through, you kind of wouldn't need Reiki? True or false?
That's a really good question. So theoretically, if we lived in a perfect world where there were no external energies coming in, that could probably be true. But we're dealing in a world where we have got a whole lot of other frequencies. We've got the electrical frequencies like Wi-Fi, cell phone towers. And I say this even as I'm communicating with you via cell phone, right? So I'm not saying that those things are bad. I think they're amazing and they're so helpful. But they do come with a certain frequency that has an impact on your body's frequency. This is different than any of our ancestors ever dealt with, right? This is new frequencies that those long ago they didn't interface with. And so anymore, we do require some maintenance to help our energy system stay clear just from environmental energies like that we're coming into contact with. But then for most of us, I don't know anyone who perfectly manages their energy, right? So even with all the practice that I have, and I coach a lot of people and I train a lot of people, even just this morning, I was having an interaction. We had kids home for the holiday and they were a little bit more tired and we had a little bit of crankiness happening, right? And I even had that moment this morning where I'm like, I just felt frustrated because there was so much bickering that was happening. We were trying to get out the door to some little gathering. And as we were driving and I had a chance to catch my breath, I realized, okay, yep, mom didn't handle that well. Let's go back and adjust. And I was able to make some adjustments and then help my body to be able to clear that energy. So it just is this practice that we have because most of us didn't grow up understanding the dynamic between the two. Most of us underestimate how powerful our breathing is, not just to getting oxygen support in, but to helping our electrical system. In fact, if people knew how powerful breathing exercises were, we'd have a whole lot more attendance at yoga, right? And helping us to learn these breathing exercises. And so I think that what you're asking in theory, yes, but we just don't live in that world. We live in a world where there is so much electrical energy coming at us all the time, technology energy coming at us all the time, that our bodies do require some extra help and support. But what we're really interested in and where I see people achieve optimal health, and I want to be really clear that that definition looks different for each person. So to me, health is not always a complete absence of all illness because sometimes it's through that illness that we learn and we grow. Optimal health to me is how can I help my body be at its highest potential while I navigate through the experiences of this life. So helping people be at optimal health, where I see that happen most often is when people now become familiar with the language of emotion. And instead of feeling ruled by their emotions or dragged along by their emotions, or worse, feeling that they're at the mercy of someone else's emotions, we want to really help people connect to agency and to understand what we get to do with emotion, and that having action plans, even if it's something as simple as changing the subject or offering a smile, if I do that based on the emotion and not the energy, I keep that circuit complete and my body does a much better job with processing energy.
Okay. I love that answer. I feel like that's super helpful because, I think that we can say, okay, well, then I'll just work on my emotions. I'll just bypass all this and not have to worry about it. But there are so many other components. And so
yes,
I like that, so I mentioned at the beginning of the call that I have worked with Mindy and it's been really neat. I don't have anything, any big physical challenges or even mental big things that I'm dealing with, but to see the difference for me has been really neat. And it's been cool to have that little extra boost and to be able to work through some things. So that maintenance is helpful.
Maintenance is helpful. We change the oil in our cars, we get tune-ups, and it is so fascinating to me how many of us will do that, but will really minimize the self-care, right? Instead of recognizing that our body is our best machine. It is a machine that we get to take care of. And I don't mean machine as in lifeless. We know our bodies are amazing and full of light. So I don't want to minimize that in any way, but they have several working components to them that require care and attention and intention with them. So in addition to giving attention, recognizing our opportunity to be intentional with that so that the self-care I'm doing, I can really maximize, because I'm the same as everybody else out there. I'm a working mom. I am busy, whether you're working outside of the home, inside of the home, whether you have a career where you work for somebody else or you own your own business or you're in the business of your family, whatever that looks like, we're busy. We have a lot of things that we get to do every day. And I am a huge fan of being so intentional with what I do so that I can help my body be at its best most of the time. And even when I get a cold or I get a little run down, I still want to look for, how am I being intentional here? How am I supporting my body? Am I giving to it tools and support that it needs to actually heal? Or am I just trying to make the annoying symptoms go away? And we kind of come from a society that talks about or focuses on symptoms rather than health. We want to make sure that those symptoms are manageable or not bugging us or not slowing us down. And not often do we come at it from the other side of, how could I increase health, overall health? How can I get my body to where I recognize that symptoms are just signals? That's all that they are. It's my body letting me know, hey, something's out of balance. And when I can start to have that relationship with my body, I stand in a lot more powerful place in my work, in my family, in my community, because I'm on the same side as my body. I'm listening and I'm paying attention.
Yeah, which is huge. And, something we can all work on, like, how do we listen to our body? It's a great, thing to practice and to tune into in whatever, wherever we are coming from, whatever that means to us. There's definitely things that we can do. Now, we are about out of time, but I would love to hear, just as we've talked, what do you hope people take away from this conversation?
That is such a good question. The number one thing that I believe is that there is so much light in this world, and that it comes in a variety of ways. There is food that is filled with light. There is music that is filled with light. There is interactions with other people. There is self-talk. There's all kinds of access points to light. And I feel personally so much hope when I look around me, when I see people interacting with each other, when I see, even in the middle of tragedy, there is always light that shows up, and it comes down to where our focus is. And I am a huge believer in the frequency of hope. And I want to give just a little definition here, because I believe that there's a counterfeit to hope. And that counterfeit is getting hopes up. And that is an energy that is based on results. But what I'm talking about here, that pure energy of hope, or that pure light of hope, or that pure feeling of hope, is that knowledge that light does in fact exist, and that I am a being of light who always has the opportunity to look for, radiate, and receive light. And that just fills me with so much hope. And at the time that I was introduced to Reiki, that was harder for me to stay connected to. I've always believed that, but we are having an experience in our lives that it was harder and harder for me to amplify that feeling in my life. And I feel that that is what my journey with Reiki has really helped me to understand in greater measure, is the ability that I have to always choose light and to always connect with light, and to understand the different ways that I can bring that light into my life. And hope, that would be my number one. Anyone listening to it, whether they feel like they've got a handle on life and everything is going smoothly, that they can know that there is even greater ability and opportunity for light and hope, that we all can keep progressing wherever we're at. But for those who maybe find themselves in a pretty dark place, as we all do from time to time, that reminder that light exists, and that all of us are beings of light that have capacity to choose light, to not only choose to look for light, but that we get to choose to receive light, and we get to choose to radiate light. And no circumstance, no external environment can take that opportunity away from us. That is our birthright, to always receive and radiate light, and to restore hope for people that that's a possibility wherever they are in their journey.
That is beautiful. I just want to conclude by saying that, you said there are all kinds of access points to light, and you are an access point to light, Mindy. You
Oh,
help
thank you.
me and, so many people to see that, to see the light, to see that hope around them. So thank you for the work that you do. I think that, it's helped me and helped so many people. And really, for the listeners today, I hope it's opened your eyes to ways that you can access light and hope. And so thank you again, Mindy, for being with us. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Moms Who Know. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Mindy Faulkner. She has so much to teach and to give, and I love learning from her. For show notes, visit momswhoknowpodcast.com, and while you're there, click the Mind Body link to get all the information about Mind Body Transformation live. And if it's something you're going to join me in, which I hope you do, be sure to sign up before the end of the month so you get that bonus cookbook.